So how's the trip been, man?
Yeah, it's been great. Just back from Amsterdam and then just fucking relaxing for a week and then get into some proper training. Because that was part of the intention for the month, like big week of work, big month of work, but then also just get away from all the distractions back home and dive into some training with the boys.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's
Still
so
sort of
fun.
building into that.
I don't know anyone that's ever been to Amsterdam for work. So kudos to you.
Honestly, probably wasn't as productive as I thought it would be in hindsight, but I'm glad I put myself to the test. Just see how much I can
Yeah,
balance both of those worlds.
good. I'm glad there was a balance then.
It's you just got to have a space that you can retreat back to where you got some privacy and then you're totally in control. It's just when you're traveling with other people, that's when working and partying is a lot harder to coordinate. That's why solo
100%.
travel is the way.
Yeah, man. It's a good life that you built for yourself.
It's getting there. I actually like it so much. I get a lot of anxiety because it hasn't been going for that long. Like, when will
Mm.
this come to an end? But I've been told by my therapist, as long as I express gratitude for it daily, then if it all goes away, I won't be sad when it's gone or as sad.
Okay. Interesting. It doesn't need to go away though, but I get that it doesn't feel stable yet, right?
People always tell me this, and like I hear where they're coming from because again, when I look at the trajectory of my business and the amount
Mm.
of attention I'm able to get, like logically that makes sense. I just don't want to be in a position where my career is not going so well. And then I'm like, what the hell happened? I never entertained this. Like, a big way I manage my
Right.
anxiety, I guess. I always entertain worst case scenario. And then if it happens, I'm like, oh, sweet. I almost like manifested this.
For sure. That makes sense too. I mean, you also have like this whole, it's not just like the social media shit that you depend on, right? Like you already have a clientele that comes to you and that trusts you. So at least
Well,
you
that
have
was
that.
the thing though. It
Right.
was September last year where I wrapped up my face-to-face business. Or the idea was to I sacked all my clients in Sydney who I had for years and I loved them very much, but it was just so I could move back to my hometown with the intention to start up a face-to-face business there. But then by sort of going full tilt into the education side of things and pushing the online thing a little bit harder, there's just been all these opportunities. And like ultimately, if you want to build a really good face-to-face business, you have to be present. You have to be showing up day in, day out. That's how I built my face-to-face business in Sydney. But with all the travel and stuff like that, it has been interesting to be like, yeah, come train with me. But then, I'm gone for 3 months. We've spent like 2 weeks training together. So sort of just giving myself the next 2 years to go all in on the traveling education and content creation side of things. And
Yeah.
with the idea of like opening up a gym in my hometown in 5 years, but I'm a long way away from that. So we'll see.
So Sydney's not the hometown.
No, so I'm from a town, Wollongong, coastal town about an hour and a half south of Sydney, and it's sort of a university town. Like it's right in that spot of small city, big town sort of vibes, and it's
Yeah,
close to
yeah,
some
yeah.
like amazing beaches and yeah.
That's so nice. Where I have a bunch of those that are surrounded around Toronto. Like I went to one of those towns, except they all look like shit and there's no beaches.
Yeah,
So that's the
that
one difference.
that's the magical thing about Wollongong. It's called sort of where the mountains meet the sea. So it almost feels a little bit like Hawaii because there really is just like a very finite amount of space in the town, which is bad for real estate prices, but your boy might be able to get in there if I get enough Instagram clout.
Yeah, man. That's the goal. That's the goal. You're doing really well on Instagram.
Yeah, it is getting there. But then again, like you start paying attention to how other people are doing. And like, I was talking with my mentor, Jamie Smith, just about the hedonic treadmill, like the dopamine spike that 500 likes used to get. Then you're like, it just doesn't feel the same anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. More, 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 more.
Yeah. But then also
It's up.
trying to lean into the dopamine component reward system of social media without just being like your classic sort of guru who's just like, oh, I've got to say something to get people riled up.
Yeah, but I feel like there's like that fine line. Like sometimes I've heard people say that they don't want to be shallow and pedantic. Shout out to Family Guy. Have you ever seen that episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where they're like, I don't want to like, like just make my content so that it's like grabby and stuff because I don't want to succumb to it. But it's like, if you have a good message, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Well,
And that's the key thing. A lot of people just equate it with being evil, but I think you could really help people if you also are able to master the attention grabbing thing.
yeah, that's very like Machiavellian of you. Are you familiar with Machiavellian, like his book, The
Not too
Prince?
much, obviously, like you've heard some theories and some like, and the name a ton of time, but like,
It's
Yeah.
been mischaracterized. Like a lot of people view it as like the pocket manual for people like Donald Trump or Putin and like all these tyrants. But the book was actually designed because Machiavelli was like an advisor to the throne sort of thing. And he noticed whenever any sort of really nice person got into power, they'd just be trampled over. And he was like, look, it's not about having good intentions. It's about like actually having an impact on the world. And he's like, if you sort of look at the tyrannical playbook of all these sociopaths, like whether they're good or bad, they're very, very effective at like
Yeah.
achieving stuff and having an impact. Is like we can learn from their tool belt sort of thing. And I'm sort of that view with social media as well. You have to try to be like this benevolent guru. It's like it is actually worth being charismatic so you can get that attention, because at the end of the day, like most people get their fitness information from social media. So if you want to educate the masses and have an impact rather than just being like, you know, there's all these evidence-based educators on Instagram. I hear them be like, oh my God, like no one wants to hear my long form, my educational content. It's like, when did social media give you that idea? It's like, you know, there's actually a really well-established place for that information where people are actively seeking it out. It's called working in academia. But then you get people who've like, you know, accumulated all these followers making memes. And it's like, you were making fucking cartoons. Why do you expect people to get onto your long form educational stuff? It's
100%.
interesting.
100%. You know, and honestly, like I'm realizing now, people are following me for like whatever I've been doing. You know, like everybody will follow you because like some people will gravitate to what you're doing. And now that I've started to do these interviews, people aren't following me for that. So I need to figure out a way to make it sort of tailored to why people are already following me, because I think it's good content, right? But that doesn't fucking matter, because if it doesn't grab attention, then you know, like I'm doing it and it's great. I love it and I think it's meaningful. And the few people that watch it, you know, they'll get something out of it. But if I want it to have more of an impact, you know, I do have to figure out how to do that. And I don't think just sitting here and whining about, you know, why isn't it working for me? Like, why don't they want to just sit here and watch a 4-minute video on Instagram? Nobody does that, you know?
Exactly right. Like it's so much friction. Like you're probably already listening to music in your headphones. If you think about the state that people are in, they're probably doom scrolling in bed. To stop what's playing in their headphones, stop that momentum that people get from scrolling, because it is such a momentum driven thing. It's like, yeah, it is pretty unrealistic. I really try to delineate, especially in my mentorship, between having a social media presence, which is just like your soapbox and your megaphone to shout through, and then having your content reservoir, which is something that's either a podcast or a YouTube channel, something that's like indexable. Because back to even talking about the way people consume content on social media, it also has to marry up with your strategy with how content is stored and indexed on a sort of platform. It doesn't matter how much effort you put into a post, it's gone in 24 hours in any sort of social media platform. Even if they save it, right, it's really hard to categorize all that information. So they're still scrolling back ages to find it. If you put that same amount of effort into a YouTube video, that is indexable, it's searchable, it's there 5 years down the road. If someone wants to search it out, they're like, man, that's the best piece of content I ever saw. So I think the thing as well that people overestimate is you can get a lot of dopamine and like a lot of good feelings from all the double taps that you're getting. But if you think about the way that you double tap things, most of the shit I double tap, I don't even consume. It's just like me supporting my mates. And I'm not even having any reaction. My pupils aren't dilating. Content didn't actually make me smile. Whereas if you think about like the relationship you feel like you have with the podcasts that you listen to on a weekly basis. And even for those people who have pumping podcasts, they've got way more followers and they're getting way more interaction on their socials and things like that, because that's what it's built for, just to build a bit of attention, receive a little bit of attention. Even though maybe only 5% or even 1% of your audience will jump across to that longer form content and engage with your reservoir, they're the people that actually give a fuck about you, and they're the people that will realistically purchase off you. Because like I said, you think about like the relationship that you potentially have with that sort of person through the way the content's consumed and how people can actually go back to it if you put the effort in there. So yeah, I think if people were a bit more thoughtful about just, you know, that classic Marshall McLuhan quote, the medium is the message, like there is a place for this long form content and there is a place where it will be appreciated and cherished for years on end. It's just not Instagram.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And it's so true. Whenever you listen to a podcast, when you find those person's posts on Instagram, you are more engaged with it because
100%.
you already have way more of a connection with that person.
You've probably got their voice going on in your ears. Like think about like having someone keep you company while you're doing your work for an hour every single week. Like I'm so grateful for all the podcast consumption me and my brother get, because like I said, I know how much I love all the podcasts I listen to on a weekly basis, and to get some of that sort of feeling back is like big dopamine spikes for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, like it's so much easier to get that dopamine spike off of a like. But again, like if you go back to what you were saying earlier about the gratitude,
Just
it's so much more meaningful and so much more deeper. If you could just take a step back and be like, wow, it's really amazing that people are actually willing to sit through a half-hour podcast with me and my brother. Like that should be the dream instead of how many followers you have on Instagram. And
yeah,
now that you're saying
100%.
all of this, I'm thinking I should definitely put these on YouTube or something, or I should like get on Spotify because Instagram's probably not the medium for it.
And there'll be someone who listens to one of these and is like, man, that's one of the best chats I've heard in a while. I wish I could sort of go back to that. Or a few months down the line, someone will say something like, fuck, this person should listen to this piece of content. It's gone on your social feed because you're a daily poster. You're using the medium appropriately.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And just gone. Like even I have so many saved posts on Instagram that I will never look at in my life.
Yeah.
It's just not well organized at all on the app, like you were saying.
Yeah, as soon as you're making your money off content creation and distribution and stuff like that, I think it becomes really, really important to one, reflect on the way you consume content a little bit more intimately, but then also realizing that you're a unique individual as well. And you can't learn everything just based on your own consumer behavior, because that's a big part of why I personally ignored email marketing for so long. I've never gone to my spam folder, opened up a bunch of emails, and then bought things through them. Turns out that's completely normal consumer behavior.
Yeah, I've never done that either.
That
Wow.
email
So
marketing is a
are you doing
beast.
emails now?
Getting into it, it's just like everything's a process, right? Like at first it's like you commit to daily posting, and then you've got like a weekly podcast, and then obviously you've got your actual job to fucking do, like servicing your clients. So it's one of the things that I'm building momentum towards for 2023, getting some
Nice.
people to help me with it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, not the priority. I find for me, if I can't relate to it deeply, I always have a harder time actually getting into the habit. So if I've never used emails to buy stuff, I find like it's even more difficult to start that up because I can't relate to it. I don't truly see the value in it. So
Yeah.
I
But
guess
that's what's
I guess
fun
finding
about
a
it. Like
mm,
me now, I like the idea that people buy things through email. So I think like the same way that people sign up with shitty fitness business coaches who just tell them to cold DM people and they're like, I want that to work, so I'm just going to participate in that behavior. I've now noticed myself purchasing more from email marketing and things like that, going through
um,
people's copy and be like, this was a fucking boring read. Or every now and then be like, man, that was fucking sweet, led right into the hook. So you can sort of develop a fetish for anything, I think.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Speaking of shitty fitness gurus and people buying into it, you want to talk about that for a second?
Hell yeah.
All right. So we could approach this from two angles. Number one, what should the fitness trainers be doing better so that they don't end up like one of those gurus? So what do the majority of fitness trainers get wrong? What are they focusing on that they shouldn't? And how can they reframe how they look at fitness so that they can better impact their clientele? Because this is what you're a master at. You're a master at reframing the narrative, like taking a look at everything that's so convoluted in the industry and flipping on its head in a way that just makes things more simple.
Yeah, this is a line of thinking I got from James Smith, the thinker. I guess Nassim Taleb, and like through the writings and appropriation of Nassim Taleb's messaging, Mladen Jovanovic. And I think my biggest takeaway in the last few years within the fitness industry, as I've got more comfortable and confident sharing my own sort of worldview and perspective, is that just appreciating that the fitness industry is very young, emerging, it's primitive in nature. And there have been many other adjacent industries that have been problem solving for complex dynamic systems for decades, dare I say centuries longer. Maybe not that, because again, dynamic systems theory is like quite a new theory in of itself, but I've always had a passion for music, for cooking, like things that embody both equal parts of art and science, or subjectivity and objectivity, or like inability for data to give you the full picture because qualitative sort of fields, and even looking at like, you know, biopsychosocial concepts in economics and like how you would manage an economy. Like, you know, you stimulate an economy the same way we give an exercise stimulus, and we're like, logically, based on the physiology or based on the pure economics, it should have this impact. But the same way our thoughts, beliefs, beliefs and expectations around human movement and training impact the outcomes, there's also no such thing as a rational economic man. So you put money into people's bank accounts being like, this should go off their mortgage, it should be spent on food and their kids' education, but they're stressed out because the economy's going down the toilet, so they spend all the money on booze and cigarettes. So it's like we see like complex systems, dynamic systems theory, like biopsychosocial concepts being applied in every other field around us. And like I said, they've just been doing it for longer. And I think if we open our eyes up a little bit more to things that are happening outside of our silo, we can start to get a bit more sophisticated problem solving type thinking.
That's brilliant. Yeah, the biopsychosocial model is taking so long for it to be integrated into medicine, into fitness, into nutrition. But everyone understands it when it comes to economics. Everyone understands.
People innately understand the
yes.
biopsychosocial thing. It's just when you're confronted with the truths of it, especially in the fitness industry, it takes a lot of those tools that we thought were like a bit more useful, and we put a bit more weight in them than we probably should have. Absolutely. I think as well, like I love the way that physios, especially in the fitness industry, are taking the lead with his biopsychosocial thinking. I've actually been quite disappointed with personal trainers' ability to sort of intake these concepts and apply it to their programming and those sorts of things as well.
Okay. So how do you do that?
You just start engaging with your clients a little bit more directly and be like, what do you think about this plan? It's not up to me to write you an optimal training plan. It's about their perception of the plan and what they think it's going to do to their body. Like John Kiley talks a lot about these concepts, and I've sort of borrowed a lot of his thinking on this topic. But yeah, it's like, I do not need to be so attached to the program I write for my client. And I also need them to empower them to be confident, to communicate their needs and their feelings about the programming towards me, and then just meeting them a bit halfway. I'm not saying it's just completely like getting the client to coach themselves, but it's definitely a lot more collaborative. And again, if you look at trends in the fitness industry, it's sort of shifted from I'm the master guru, I'm going to save you, to that hero's journey where it is everything is a little bit more collaborative. And you realize it's the client that's got to do the work. I'm just sort of there to remove a few barriers or help them clear some obstacles a little bit easier.
Beautiful. Yeah. So this collaboration is key. And you have this whole perspective of sort of fuck optimal. And that is because we're people, and we're influenced by our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, by our culture around us. So optimal would be great, but we're not robots, and we can't always subscribe to the perfect program. And it's the same thing like you were saying with economics. Like ideally you'd be allocating your money perfectly, but nobody does that because we're emotional beings.
Yeah, so, and because people talk about like the physics of it, which ultimately is underpinned by mathematics. And then again, you look at music, which people just accept as such an art form, but at the end of the day, all that Western scale is underpinned by mathematics. So in theory, like with music, you should be able to put together a song and be like, this is the most consonant sound you've ever heard. There's no way anyone could not like this. But again, you play it to a whole bunch of different people, and they're going to have a whole bunch of different reactions to it.
Right. Right. There is a science to it, but it doesn't always apply to everybody. And there is a qualitative aspect. There is an emotional human aspect of it. So,
same with cooking as well. Like, you know, we understand like food science, the way certain flavors go together, light up different parts of your palate. But then like, what's that fruit? Oh, it's that Asian fruit. Oh God, I've lost it. It was the perfect reference for this. But yeah, again, there's no such thing as objectivity outside of the individual perspective.
We could talk about cilantro, I guess, or something like that. I fucking
that's
hate
a good
tomatoes.
one.
Yeah.
It tastes like soap to me too.
Okay, I love it. See, there you go.
Oh, right.
There you go. Yeah. That's so fun. But tomatoes I cannot do. They taste like vomit to me. There's no way tomatoes taste the same for everybody, because if they do, the majority of the world are psychopaths, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one is experiencing what you're experiencing with a tomato at a population level.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Okay, so then how do you try and have a conversation with clients if they come to you and they're like, I want a program that's perfectly optimal, that's going to get me completely shredded, that's going to make me lose 20 pounds of body fat, and they're immediately just thinking about the results and they want the perfect plan of how to get there. And in their mind, they think they can adhere to it 100%, because a lot of people that start fitness are thinking like that. They don't think about how they're always human, and that maybe there's going to be some weeks that are just shitty, and life happens and they're not going to be able to stick to the program. So how do you go about having that sort of conversation with them?
I think it's a tough one, and it's one that I haven't mastered either because I'm pretty utopian in terms of I am definitely trying to get people into a more process orientation. But the belief that I find myself constantly struggling to challenge successfully is this idea that fitness can become a really enjoyable part of their life. Because again, I look at all the people that get the best results, and as much as they talk about the grind and all the hard work that they put in for this voluntary hobby, like, there's not many professional lifters out there at the end of the day. So you can tell me that, like, oh, I suffered through all this hard training, but it's like, nah, you love it. Like, you're just neurodivergent. Yeah. So you love doing the same 3 lifts day in, day out. Like, that's fucking the most amazing thing for some people. And then they sort of like, well, other people can't tolerate the boring work. It's like, nah, you just wired a little bit differently. So I haven't given up on that dream to make everyone like a participant in fitness and to engage with these health-seeking behaviors for a lifetime, because once you overcome that hurdle, it's so easy then to motivate them and go out and change a bunch of other behaviors on top of that. But
Angus, can you hear me?
we're back.
Sorry, man. I dropped my AirPods. I dropped them, and then it immediately connected to them, so that it went into the
All right, AirPods are just chaos. But yeah, it really just is about like there's no way around process orientation if they haven't found some level of joy in what they're doing. So even if you have to write them a program that might not get them the result they're seeking immediately, if you can write them something that they actually enjoy doing, then you can slowly attenuate that process into something that's a little bit more productive. I would also say that as an industry, and again, this probably isn't something that's on the consumer or the individual so much as the educators and the practitioners within the fields and the attitudes that they're propagating. But I feel like where we've done the general population a real disservice, at least the ones that have engaged with personal trainers, is we haven't educated them on what a consistent stimulus means, or at least what does a relatively consistent stimulus mean? Because I think all of a sudden, if you're like, hey, look, it's just about not missing a whole week of training. Hey, it's not about doing the exact same variation of a squat week in, week out. If you want to front squat 1 week, back squat the next, and then hack squat the 3rd week, or like just giving them more flexible programming tools, because I think that's the thing that we've failed to communicate to the general population en masse as our understanding as trainers has leveled up a little bit. But I guess the same way most ideas get transmitted through the practitioner and then years later become more aware in the layperson's zeitgeist, I think it is something that will happen over time. Because like for me, that's only been a belief that I've just got comfortable with, I would say, in the last 18 months to 2 years personally.
Yeah. And I would say the same for me. I don't think that's something that I originally thought of getting into fitness, getting into even physio. I think we're always trying to think of the best possible thing to do and really undervaluing how important it is to just show up and do something, even if it is a little less optimal or if it's a little different from what you were doing. You don't need to do maybe a back squat 5 times, like doing it every single week, day after day. Maybe that's more optimal in theory. On paper.
And the thing is as well, when you allow them to rotate those exercises, they might have a day where the back squat just clicks and then they go on a back squat kick for the next 5 weeks. And like when that's self-led, rather than me being like, no, go on, do you want a good back squat or not? Go in there and practice it again. It's like, I think that's a more favorable sort of approach to it.
Right. Yeah, I think people have a better time learning when they have the freedom to be creative and to explore, as opposed to just having to be stuck to this rigid thing.
I want them to view the gym as a sandpit to explore their body, first and foremost.
Yeah, I think that's the goal, for sure. That's amazing. I love that.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Angus, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this a few times, and I think this should not go on Instagram because there was way too much value in it.
Oh yeah.
And nobody's gonna listen to it because I wanna share it with everyone. So I really appreciate it. This whole thing was really, really good. And I think you have a really, really amazing thought process. You're really brilliant, very creative. And I love the way that you're able to flip things on its head and just look at things through a different lens and make things more simple for people. It's really, really important. And I think it's one of the most valuable skills someone could have. And it's key to be able to do that with a smile on your face and cursing a little bit so that
Yeah.
people actually like to listen to you. So
Thanks so much. And
kudos to you.
what you have picked up from what I put out is exactly, I feel seen when I get all these compliments because this is exactly the sort of stuff and the energy that I want to put out into the fitness space. So thank you so much. So is this the start of your YouTube channel?
It might be. I mean, I've used YouTube, but only for shorts. So I think this might be the first long form thing that I post on YouTube.
All right, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me that little tidbit of wisdom. Like, don't only use Instagram because you're right. You're definitely
Sorry,
right.
I expect you to take me out for a drink when you've hit 10,000 subscribers and I'll make my way to Canada eventually.
Dude, if you're ever here or if I'm ever in Sydney, then 100 or wherever you are in the world because you're traveling everywhere, 100% we'll meet up because I'm sure it would be great to grab a beer together and not always talk about fitness. But yeah,
100%. Well, see, that's the thing. You're always talking about fitness, even if you're not discussing it directly.
it's true, man. It's true. I like, and I'm obsessed with physio and fitness too. So it's always just my girlfriend hates me for always just bringing it up at dinner and shit like that. But
Still get used to it.